Oh, hey, it's Matt Steen, co-founder of Chemistry Staffing. This is another chemistry conversation, and today I'm pretty excited because Jeremy Moore leads the church lending team at Bank of the West, which means if you need money, you call Jeremy. I mean, that's pretty much how it works, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's one way to do it for
Yeah.
sure. We've got the checkbook.
Outstanding. That's so good to hear. You and I will be talking after this. But Jeremy's been working with churches for, geez, like at least 20 years now, kind of through good markets through 2008, which I'm sure you're still in therapy for, and I mean everything in between. And so, Jeremy, man, thanks for taking some time to talk.
Yeah, great to see you, Matt. Always a pleasure to hang out and talk a little bit about what we're doing for the church and how we can better serve them.
Yeah. So tell me, man, what are you learning now? What are you learning about the church?
Oh man, well I'm learning that don't say I've seen it all, right? Every time we say that, something crazier happens, right?
Yeah.
I know you mentioned '08, and that was certainly an incredibly disruptive time for all of us, but for church, right? It really, I have a friend who said, yeah, what happened was, everybody was in the water and the tide went out, and you found out who was swimming naked.
Yeah.
Right? And so yeah,
There's a zoo analogy there, isn't there?
There you go. That's right. Yeah, I have pants on today.
That's good to hear.
But no, it is interesting, what has happened in the last 18 months now. None of us had ever seen anything like it before, right? And so continuing to see churches evolve, I think the good news is, for me, like you said, we've been serving churches for decades. And we are part of a big bank that has a lot of other lines of business. I get to serve ministries, it's my calling, and I get to do that at this big secular bank. So that's awesome. But for them, this is credit risk.
Yeah.
And so it's been neat this last 18 months to see churches weather this well and be good stewards. Obviously there's a lot of fundamental disruption happening, but in the midst of all that, churches have managed their money pretty well. And so coming out of that, when you're talking about from a banking and financial institution standpoint, for me to be able to go to our credit risk team and say, hey, look, here's an industry that was shut down for months and really didn't miss a beat. They made the changes they needed to make, and they're doing well. So that part has been encouraging, certainly a very different experience than what I experienced back in the financial crisis, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been, never a dull moment, but all in all has been a positive experience for us.
And that's been kind of shocking, hasn't it? I mean, there's a lot of us, and myself included, who, when this started to happen, we're expecting the sky to fall. And it seems like, I mean, there's been some stories of churches that have just struggled, but for the most part, most churches have actually managed well financially, right?
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think, different studies and polls have it in different places, but on average, I think, based on our information, we would say the average church, is down maybe as much as 10% on average in revenue.
Yeah.
Their expenses have been down even more, right? Because we had buildings that we cut a lot of the events and ancillary spending. And so net, from a banking perspective, debt coverage was up, net cash available was up, which makes for a stronger institution. So it has been surprising. And here we are, we're recording this going into Q4 of 2021. So we'll date it a little bit. The hits keep coming. And yet the church has been remarkably good at adapting and figuring out ways to adjust their financial situation so that they can continue to reach people.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So as you're looking to the future, I mean, and who knows how long we're stuck in pandemic times and all that kind of stuff. I don't see that changing anytime soon. But what are you looking out and seeing and saying, hey, hey, church, we need to be aware of this?
Yeah, I think that's, that is always the question. I think it's more front and center for all of us today than usual is, okay, where do we go from here? We've seen some trends over the past decade plus that have been continuing to evolve. And I think, what's happened in the last 18 months is we got 5 to 7 years of trend, punched into a very short period of time. So we fast forwarded. And what we fast forwarded to, right, is a more remote friendly culture, right? As evidenced by the conversation we're having today.
Yeah.
This is not going away.
Mhm.
Even as people get more comfortable with in-person meetings, I was on a plane yesterday. So some of that is happening.
Yeah.
But just as often as we're doing that, this is not going away. And I think that transitions for church too. So from a staffing standpoint, I think there's going to be some interesting continued evolution in, okay, hey, those staff positions that don't have to be in-person pastoral, hey, could we have an offsite remote executive pastor, CFO, financial people? I think we'll see more of that. And the other piece, and we're seeing this in other industries, and we're certainly seeing it in church, is the big getting bigger, right? Consolidation. Those that were strong going in are stronger today. Those that were struggling going in, some of them are already gone. I don't think we're done with that. I think we'll continue to see some consolidation. And that is, I talk about church and business, interchangeably, because I think a well-run church is a business, right? And now our business is eternal, right? It's
just ticked off half the.
That's right. That's right. Keep listening, right?
Half the people that have been, all one. There's one person that's no longer listening. So yeah, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I think when you look at those churches that are doing better today than they were 2 years ago, the common denominator isn't actually the visionary, great teaching pastor. It's actually that they have a well-organized and well-run financial systems and a good business in place. And
so let me ask you this. I mean, and this I'm catching, because we didn't talk about this. I didn't know you were going to say that, but I mean, here's the gotcha. I mean, so you're a banker, and you're deeply concerned about the business fundamentals that are going on in the back office of a church when you're lending. But at the same time, you're a follower of Jesus. You are wholeheartedly committed to the church, and you know that the church isn't your typical business. How do you balance doing the business side well with also understanding, hey, this is ministry, and so sometimes the right decision is a horrible business decision?
No, that is a tension that I get to live in every day, and frankly, most executive pastors and business administrators get to live there every day too, right? Certainly there is a walk by faith component, absolutely, what the church needs to do, but there is also accounting the cost, right? And I think that that is frankly what I see my role and calling to be, is to affirm those that are making those decisions and being the guy who has to say no, right? On occasion, but then also to acknowledge the hard and important work that goes into being in that every day. To me, that is the most, if we're talking about the most underappreciated role in ministry, it is the finance executive, CFO, bookkeeping folks. They are essential, and yet most senior pastors, and certainly all youth pastors, don't like them, right?
Yeah. I think the biggest irony of my career was going from a youth pastor to an executive pastor. Man, I had to eat a lot of crow during that transition. So
that's a serious one. And for everybody watching, I also at one time, hard to believe, was a youth pastor. And I tell everybody, I got out of that as soon as I realized I don't really like teenagers that much. And now I have 2 of them living in my house, so that's a whole other story.
That's awesome. Very cool. So as you as you're going through this, I mean, what encouragement are you giving the pastors right now?
Stay the course, right? I think that's all of us, right, are experiencing increased levels of uncertainty, and underlying there is this sense of stress and maybe even dread, right? It just kind of is an undercurrent for everyone, and certainly pastors are no different, right? Ministry people are feeling all the same things, and yet they also have to deal with people coming to them, looking for comfort and expecting them to be the source of calm and steady, and that is incredibly tough and frankly unsustainable to do that indefinitely, right? So I think acknowledging our own, hey, this is real for us too, is a big piece, and then taking regular time. I'm encouraging leaders everywhere say, hey, you need to be unplugging regularly.
Yeah.
As much as I love, these kinds of events, you've got to have some days where you're like, no, I'm not going to look at the screen today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, it's essential. I actually have a few days a week away coming up, and, counting down for that, because I think we need, we've always needed to be able to unplug. I think more than ever, you've got to, and when you do it, fully do it. So I'm trying to encourage folks to take, regular time offline, away, truly away.
Yeah.
And then just acknowledging that, hey, it's hard.
Yeah.
And maybe this is not the affirmation that they want to hear, but also it's hard, it's important. And frankly, I don't know that it ever goes back completely to the way it was.
No.
So it's interesting for sure.
No, and for good and for bad too, right? On never going back completely the way it was. So I love that the disconnect and all. Man, I tell you, it has been a brutal season, and we as pastors, probably more than nearly any other career field, I think, understand that the work is never done. And it's so easy for us to fall into the trap, especially now when in many ways we are working more and more remote, right? To never put it down. But if you're not putting it down, if you're not really resting and taking your vacation days, you will fry. And that's not going to be good for you, the church, your congregation, or anything. So
yeah. And if you're out there and you are one of those church board members or others, is a little more grace. We should always have grace, but certainly and frankly, revisit your vacation and PTO policies too. I think that's something, even at the bank, we have a fairly generous, paid time off program. And we've intentionally said, hey, you know what, let's give a few extra unexpected Fridays off. Let's dial back the meetings and try to keep them in normal business hours.
Yeah.
Because the creep is real, right? When you realize, oh, well, we can do this anytime. I'll just shoot an email off and expect a response. And it's a thing. That's
always healthy. So, well, Jeremy, thank you, man. Thanks for taking the time to kind of walk through some of this. Thanks for the work that you're doing for the kingdom. Most people look at bankers and have some sort of existential dread. But what I've appreciated about you just in the time that we've been able to get to know each other is just your heart for the kingdom more than your heart for I don't know, the dollars. So I think that's super healthy. So thank you for that.
Hey, I do count it a joy and privilege, to get to work with ministries, especially those that are really doing the work of saying, hey, how can we do this with excellence?
Yep.
Be good stewards, of the resources that are being, donated to us. And it's neat to see so many ministries doing good work and figuring out new and creative ways. I'm excited to see, the continued evolution of how we reach people better. And I think this whole crisis has created some good opportunities for us to do that.
Yeah, forced us into it. So, well, hey, if you want to learn more or connect with Jeremy, we'll link off to his LinkedIn down below and point you to where he is at Bank of the West. And any other words of wisdom you have for guys before we wrap up today?
Yeah, appreciate all that they do. It is important work, especially those of you, again, back to the executive pastor and CFO types, because I know that they're not getting thanks at work on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And keep it up. It's important. Yeah. If you ever need help, I'm always happy to be whether it's a shoulder to cry on, or a lot of folks like to use me as the bad guy, right? Well, we could do that, but Jeremy, he does this all day, every day for the bank, and he says that's a stupid idea. So you can blame it on me if you want to, and please take your time off.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Jeremy, thanks, man. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, great to see you, Matt.
Yep.
God bless. Have a good one.